Do you ever find that you have to yell in order for your kids to hear you? Today at Live on Purpose TV, how to get your kids to listen without yelling. Like many of you, Vicky and I have a pet. It's a little dog. He's a Yorkie poo, cute little guy. We named him Mozzie. And he is a smart little dog too. I was wondering recently, and I think I commented to Vicky about this, has he trained us or have we trained him? You know what I'm talking about if you're a dog owner. We train each other. This is true with our kids too. Our kids train us to do certain things, to act certain ways, to respond to them in a way that they've trained us to respond to them. And we do the same with our kids. Notice that it's going both directions, because that's going to be important as we manage the dynamic of how we're going to encourage our kids to listen to us without hopping into the yelling mode. Now, having introduced it with my dog, what if your kids have trained you to yell? I had a dad come in to talk to me once. I can't remember all the circumstances around his particular family, but I think he was a single dad. He had about 4 or 5 kids, and he was just feeling so frustrated because every time he asked the kids to do something, they would just ignore him until he got so frustrated and so upset that he was yelling, and then they would finally respond. Can you relate to this? Does this happen at your place? So he asked me a question. He said, Dr. Paul, why do my kids wait until the 12th time I've asked them and I'm all upset and angry before they'll do something? How would you answer that? Why do they wait until the 12th time? Because they have trained him to yell at them before they respond, because he has trained them to ignore him until the 12th time. So I asked him a question. Why do they do it the 12th time? Think about that for a minute. What is different time number 12 from time number 1? Picture this. Time number 1, Dad is, hey guys, would you please clean up all of that stuff so that we can have dinner? All right? Now that registers with the kids as, what did Dad say? I don't know. Was it anything important? No, I don't think so. Do I need to pay attention to that? Probably not. Time number 2. Guys, did you hear me? Kids are hearing. Did Dad say something? I don't know. I don't know if he said anything. Is it important? Probably not. Time number 12. Hey! And he's popping coronaries and everything. How do the kids hear that? Oh, Dad's talking, sounds important. I probably better do something or I'm going to get clobbered. That's why they respond time 12, because they're interpreting it as, oh, it's important now. I'm going to get clobbered if I don't do something now. See, he has raised his voice to the point where he triggers that understanding in their little minds. So how are we going to switch this dynamic? My suggestion to him was, clobber him the first time. Now, don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying you should clobber your kids. I'm actually against that. But what I am saying is, move the real consequences up in the sequence so that they follow the calm, cool, collected voice instead of the yelling voice. We're going to train them to respond when we talk to them calmly and in a loving tone with a smile on our face. In fact, we can train kids to understand that Dad smiling means that kids better start thinking. But they're not equating it with that yet. Okay? So, how are kids interpreting what we're saying? I heard a phrase years ago that makes a lot of sense to me. Bad breath is better than no breath at all. So they don't mind having a little bad breath. It actually makes them feel validated in some ways. So yelling at our kids is not necessarily a punishment. In fact, from a behavioral psychology standpoint, yelling is a trap because it is a reinforcement, not a punishment. I'm talking strictly behavioral terms. Those of you who have studied a little behavioral psychology will understand that the difference between a reinforcer and a punishment decreases a behavior, a reinforcer increases a behavior. Yelling is a reinforcer, not a punishment. That's important to know because we inadvertently set ourselves up for more problems when we yell. It trains our kids to respond then instead of when we're talking calmly. So here's a strategy that might help. And I've used this with so many clients and even with my own kids. Understand that your kids always have choices. Always. And if you haven't figured this out yet, notice that what you give them as choices, sometimes they pick something totally different, right? So they've always got choices, and at a very minimum, they have a choice to either cooperate or not with you. So, acknowledging their choice in the matter, let's set it up so that we have the greatest opportunity for success. I need to go back to something that I've mentioned before, and that has to do with the rules of plumbing. Some of you may have not heard this from me yet, but there were times early in our marriage when Vicki and I would find that something's wrong with the house and we need to have it fixed, and we couldn't afford a repairman. And so I got to do a lot of home repairs. Some of these involved plumbing. I'm not a plumber. I'm a psychologist. There's a difference. They both start with P, but that's about where the similarities end. Except for this. I consulted with my dad about this plumbing project that I was doing. He says, yeah, Paul, there's only 2 rules to plumbing, basically. 2 things you need to know. I'm interested, Dad. What is that? He said, well, the 2 rules are, first, water runs downhill. Okay, I can see why that one's important. Then he paused for a minute. He said, rule number 2, don't lick your fingers. And I laughed. It's funny, right? But if you've ever installed a toilet, you know what we're talking about here. Water runs downhill, don't lick your fingers. What does this have to do with psychology? I think that there are 2 analogous rules in psychology. Rule number 1, this is the water runs downhill rule. Some things you control, other things you don't. Get clear about that, it's important. And especially when you're dealing with your kids, some things you control, other things you don't. Things like their attitude and whether they're going to cooperate or not. You don't control that, they do. Here's rule number 2. Pay attention to the things you do control. This is going to save so much heartache as a parent because we're going to focus our efforts on what is within our own control to accomplish. Now let's go to the strategy. Try this. And make some comments down below about what you experience about this. I would love to hear from some of you on this. Here it is. Give them 2 choices. All right? Give them 2. Now, there's always more than 2, but you're going to give them 2 choices. Either one is okay with you. Either one. We make this mistake as parents sometimes to say, okay, you do this or else. Well, or else what? We give them a choice that is one that we like, and then they go pick something that we don't like. Okay? That's why I want you to give them 2 choices. Either one you're okay with. Let me give you an example. You can clean your room yourself, or you can hire someone else to do it. Either way is okay with me. As long as it's clean to my satisfaction, I'm good. That's an example of 2 choices. You're okay with either one. Okay, for a younger child, you can come with me on your own feet, or you can come with me on my feet. Either one's okay with me. Do you see? Either way, they're coming with you. Are you going to come or not? Are you going to come, or am I going to leave you home? Look, if you're not willing to leave the kid home, and you shouldn't be if they're young enough that this would be an issue, then don't use that as a threat. They'll see right through it, and your words will be garbage. We're going to talk about turning your words from garbage into gold. so that when they hear your voice, your melodious, pleasant voice, they listen and pay attention, because that's gold. See, we're turning words from garbage into gold. So we're going to give 2 choices. You're okay with either one. Now here's the kicker. You control one of them. Why? Because that one becomes default. That is the one that is going to happen if they refuse to choose. They chose that one. So in the examples that I gave, you can clean your own room, or you can hire someone else to do it. Either one is really okay with me. Which one do you control? That one. Because if they choose not to clean their room at all, and they probably didn't call up Annie's maid service, prepaid of course, to come and take care of that room for them, then what did they choose? They chose to hire someone to do it. And who did they choose? Chose you. Yeah, now you might be thinking, I'm not going to clean my kid's room. They're supposed to do it. Okay, fine. Remember, we gave them 2 choices. You can clean it yourself. You can hire someone else to do it. Either way is okay with me. Don't go back on your word and say, actually, I'm not okay with that one now. You be okay with it. I told my kids, they learned this pretty early. You can hire me anytime you want. And then I gave them my rates. There's no kid out there that wants to pay $200+ per hour to have their room cleaned. But that's my rate. Just saying. Okay? And I'm happy to come clean your room for that much. Just give me a call and we'll make an arrangement. Nobody hires me to clean their room for $200+ an hour. Why? Because that's too expensive. Well, what if your kid hires you to clean their room? Okay, well, that's going to cost them something. I'm not saying you should charge them $200. What I am saying is it should cost them something, and you need to be able to control that cost. That's another conversation that we'll probably have in another video. Okay, but you got to be okay with both choices, because one of those you control, and that's the one that is default. Okay, go to the younger child example. You can come on your own 2 feet, or you can come on my feet. Either way is okay with me. Okay, you got a 2-year-old that wants to do everything by myself, right? Have you heard that one? Yeah. Which one do they want to choose? Well, they want to be in control of some things. They might choose their own 2 feet. But if they don't choose to come with you, you get to pick them up, because they're 2 and you can still do this, right? You get to pick them up and they get to go on your feet. Now you might think, well, I just want them to come. I don't want them to fight me. Right. Here's a little tip. Think versus fight. Think versus fight. Every interaction you have with your kids is going to invite them to do one or the other. What do we want them to do? Think. Because if they're thinking, they're going to make some pretty good decisions. What do they want to do? Sometimes they want to fight. And so they've trained us to yell at them so that they can fight with us. It's not fair, but it happens. Okay? And I don't say they're doing this maliciously. I don't think they are. I think it's just working for them. And bad breath is better than no breath at all. We're going to turn our words from garbage into gold, so that when we speak in that melodious, loving tone of voice that we always use as a parent now, they're going to hear that and they're going to say, what? Okay, so pretend for a minute that you give them that choice. You can come on my own 2 feet, or you can come on your own 2 feet, or you can come on my feet. Either way is okay with me. And then I'm not coming, so you pick them up and you take them with. Now, what happens the next time? Assuming that you were calm and cool and collected and you didn't lose your cool and fight. What happens next time when you say, hey, we're going. Would you like to come on your own 2 feet? Or would you like to come on mine? Either way is okay with me. Do you see what we're talking about? Okay? Would you like to clean your own room? Or would you like to hire someone to do it? Either way is okay with me. If they just paid a big cost the last time, they're going to be thinking now. See, now we've accomplished think versus fight. We've turned our words from garbage into gold, so that we can talk to our kids and we don't have to yell. And we've just trained them to respond to us differently because of how we've approached them. So now maybe you won't have to yell as much and your kids will actually listen. You've turned your words from garbage into gold. Live on Purpose TV has some more gold for you. Make sure you subscribe.